But the worry is for some people, if we're going to have discussions about things, what about when it's sensitive topics? What about if it's controversial, sensitive, maybe it's relationships, sex education, maybe it's something to do with politics? How can we manage that then, rather than just have chaos of people arguing or people feeling uncomfortable? So that is a worry that people do have. So if you think about it beforehand, I mean, some lessons, some classes, you might not have that discussion. And you know what? That's also fine. So you might have a group like this year, some people have picked up classes, they've never met them before, and they just had to go straight in with relationships and sex education. I appreciate that's a tricky thing to just get to know a class with, especially as it's not a form group anymore. And so for some of those groups, we've said, okay, cut back on the discussion and just do the content, and just, managing the behavior is more important right now, and the discussions can come later. So I don't want you to come away from this thinking every lesson must be discussion, but I think it's something that people worry about, which is why I wanted to give you a chance to think about it. I think staying calm, signposting help for students is good. Also seeking help yourself if you're triggered by something. And this is something that I really thought about last year when I was planning lots of lessons around some really sensitive relationship sex stuff around consent and sexual violence and all that. We had to do these lessons, and I found that I was it was really making me think a lot and affecting me in a way. And then I reached out, and I actually reached out at school to the school counsellor who was there, and had a session remotely with her, because I realized that it was just like really heavy. And sometimes with CPSHE, it is heavy content. And that's absolutely fine. If you then need to just say to Rachel or to another student teacher or the teacher in the class, actually, I find this content really heavy. What tips do you have for how I can cope with this? And seeking help, like, that is not a failure, or, and actually, I think it's a lot more common than we think it is, and we don't necessarily talk about that. So I think, we kind of think about the students and how are they doing in the classroom, but think about yourself as well as a teacher. Then also, I think you can acknowledge the awkwardness or embarrassment in the class. You can say, this is a bit embarrassing talking about this, or we might feel a bit awkward talking about boobs and bums and things. You can acknowledge it, and sort of then it can help the moment pass. Okay, but we are learning because we want to be making informed decisions in the future, or we're learning because we want to support the school ethos where everybody is valued. So you can acknowledge it and then kind of move on. It can help the awkwardness and silliness sort of disappear if you go, okay, it is a bit silly and awkward, isn't it, to talk about this, but let's move on. It's really good to talk about actual publicly known case studies as well. And we're very fortunate, aren't we, now that lots of celebrities are speaking out about these issues. So, for example, Billie Eilish, who a lot of the students know, talked about the effect. She saw a lot of porn when she was younger, and then she's spoken recently about that effect it had on her brain and how it made her feel. And she's a kind of example you could use, rather than it just being speculations, that can help the students see this is a real life person, this is how it affected her, and she's in the public eye and speaking about it. So that I quite like to use real examples when we can. Referring to someone else rather than you and me. So what could someone do in this situation, rather than what are you going to do in this situation, or what did I do in that situation? And we can come back to that with the group agreement or the ground rules. So kind of removing it from the people in the room to being something out there, and okay, this is what they were faced with, what might they do? And rather than talking about a friend of yours, even just someone I know, or I heard that, just making it that little bit distance. And then keep bringing it back to the school aims and principles, where everyone is valued, and everybody's that people come from different situations in life. They've got different family setups, for example, and everyone is valued in this school. So we're going to learn how to support everybody. And then finally, having a clear group agreement or ground rules, I think, can really, really help with this. And I don't know how many of you have used ground rules or have CPSHE or maybe in other subjects. It's a really helpful way to then just keep coming back to, rather than it being, I know some teachers do, here's Miss Marx's 5 rules for a classroom. You can do that, but I think in terms of CPSHE, because there's so much of the students involved in it, I guess, and in their lives, I would make it with them and have it as a sort of negotiation between us. What is going to help us to have these conversations and what isn't going to help us. You can then return to it each lesson. Okay, last time we had these rules, do we want to change them? Or this topic, we're looking at this and this. Do we think we need to change the rules at all to help us cope with this topic? I think it's just for CPSHE that having that combination between the teacher and the students. Sometimes in some lessons it might be laying down the law, here's my rules for my classroom. But for CPSHE, for discussions, agreeing it with the students or having that negotiation with them can be very powerful. So it cultivates a positive environment. It can allow students to opt in or opt out. You can say, you know, everyone has one pass, or people don't have to answer if they don't want to, that kind of thing. Develop it with the students. It supports inclusion and diversity, sets expectations for the lessons, can really help with behaviour management, can help safeguard the students from sort of disclosing things or from accusing each other of things. You can signpost to support and gives clear guidance around questions and how they are asked and answered if you have these rules. So the first way you could do it is to have example rules up. You could have a list here, or other lessons might be sent out with example rules, and you could say, okay, look at all these, which 5 do we want? Or you could look at them, you think of the ones you would like them to choose from, or students can just sort of come up with what they know from their own discussions that they've had. Examples could be ask questions but not personal ones, show respect, join in, be kind, use language appropriate for the classroom, only share information about yourself and not others. Or it could be do not share information about yourself, only say it's about someone. Keep yourself and others safe, talk to trusted adults after the session, confidentiality. They're kind of examples of ones that you could have, things you could have around only using technical or appropriate language about body parts, for example, or you could have not disclosing things about people in the room or people who aren't in the room. Lots of different rules you could have, and you could choose from them. I normally like 4 or 5, and then you could return to them each lesson and see if you want to change them.